Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first for our 2 games this week is 2018's Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, the struggle to recover from a controversial and sluggish fighting game launch after tremendously high expectations.
After that, it's the fast-paced anime action of an attempt from Arc System Works at one of the most famous anime franchises of all time, 2018's Dragon Ball FighterZ.
That's right, the theme this week, EVO baby!
Yeah, EVO is this weekend!
How exciting. Now, we're not talking about like the 2 biggest fighting games in the world. I mean, certainly Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with that top entrant number, getting that final slot for finals on Sunday.
Who's ready to stay up till 4 a.m. watching it?
Oh god, and if they drop Smash Brothers news, then like I just can't. But you know, these 2 games were certainly the biggest fighting game, at least traditional 2D fighting game releases of last year, of 2018. And they're still represented here at EVO 2019, but they have great soundtracks with just these hard rock, just pushing it, get that adrenaline pumping, and we figure with EVO happening here, what better time to talk about these games than now? Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm very excited to watch EVO. For us, unfortunately, it is not actually this weekend. It is next weekend, as we record these like a week in advance. But
I'm actually going to be in LA on that EVO Sunday. That should be interesting, and in some hotel there. It's not Las Vegas, but
yeah,
you know, it's still Pacific time, so maybe it won't be crazy late for me. I don't know, but yeah, should be very exciting. Well, I'm going to start talking about my game first this week here, and that's Street Fighter V Arcade Edition. Now, of course, there is no denying Street Fighter's legacy as a 2D fighting game, and really the franchise that almost in a way started it all. I mean, it began, sure, as a 1987 arcade game, but it really exploded with 1991's Street Fighter II: The World Warrior. And honestly, yeah, it's the foundation of 2D fighting games as we know them today. I mean, would not be anywhere close without that game. Immensely popular, just, you know, people gathering around, you know, SNESs or other consoles at the time. There was a Genesis version, and all of the subsequent versions thereafter. It was just a movement for a genre at the time.
Anybody that wants to learn some of the history of Street Fighter II, I hate to plug my own stuff, but we've done Street Fighter II for Smasterpieces already, and it's one of my favorite episodes we have done so far, because me and Matt are just 2 idiots who don't know how to play fighting games, and so in order to make up for that, we also sort of did a little bit of research into the history of the game. And there's also a really good, I believe it's a Kotaku article about the history and development of Street Fighter II that is just a fascinating read.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's gotta be amazing. I mean, it's one of those games that changed the landscape in a way. And of course, future releases of Street Fighter would, you know, come out with popular releases, crossovers. Eventually, though, the interest in fighting games waned a little bit. And then in 2008, Street Fighter IV really brought things back. Street Fighter IV, very popular game. Even over its original release, there was Super Street Fighter IV, Ultra Street Fighter IV. Honestly, we're talking about EVO. I mean, this game was an EVO mainstay. And Street Fighter had, you know, the last spot at EVO locked down, honestly, until this year. So that's kind of what makes Smash Brothers usurping it kind of a big deal. But when it came to Street Fighter V, Street Fighter V was released worldwide on February 16th, 2016 on PlayStation 4 and PC. Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, which is kind of an updated kind of Game of the Year in a way-ish package that kind of included all the DLC releases up until that point. That game, the Arcade Edition, released nearly 2 years later on January 16th, 2018, also on PS4 and PC. And yeah, like I said, it included all the previous content released up until that point. There were some single-player improvements with arcade mode and battle mode. There was an additional V-trigger special ability for each character, and it included everything that was up through Season 2 at that point. So it was a nice kind of re-release in a way for a game that had a history that we'll get to. Street Fighter V and Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, developed by Capcom and Dimps, published by Capcom. What is it? If it's not clear already, it is a 2D fighting game where characters use a variety of unique attacks and special abilities to deplete the health bar of their opponent. Now, as far as what's new, what's different, of course the EX bar returns, right, for Street Fighter V. It's had been there since Street Fighter 3. It returns to either power up specials with EX moves or perform super moves. Oddly enough, Street Fighter 4's focus attacks were removed from this game, but instead, Street Fighter V's new feature was the V-Gauge, which powers 3 different types of techniques. There are V-Skills, which are special attacks that are unique to each fighter. There are V-Reversals, which is kind of like a burst counter in a way to stop opposing combos, and V-Triggers, as the aforementioned V-Triggers, which deplete the gauge for a unique character ability. So it could be like, more damage on Ryu's Hadouken, or more kicks in Chun-Li's flurry kicks. So different things like that. I don't know why you necessarily play Street Fighter for the plot and or the lore, but I guess the gist of it in this game is that the evil Shadowloo organization is initiating Operation Chains by launching 7 artificial satellites in orbit known as the Black Moons. They're planning to spread fear and despair, which is the source of M. Bison's psycho power, and so they want to siphon this energy in order to render Bison and his forces invincible. And of course, everyone has their own motivations and their own part to play in this conflict, but that just gets very complicated very quickly. Joe, this is the point where I ask you, what are your experiences with Street Fighter V?
I've played it a little bit. I bought it on PS4, the original version, not Arcade Edition, on PS4, and had a good old time with it. Mained Laura, and then I bought Arcade Edition for Steam a couple, last year. I think it was an Evo sale, actually.
Makes sense.
And it was ridiculously cheap, $15. And so I own that, and I've played that a little bit, where I have enjoyed Ed. I think I enjoyed Ed a lot, but I would not say that I don't have the mechanical skill to be good at fighting games. And I never will, and I've accepted this. Smash is kind of an exception only because Smash is very simple. Quarter circles, man. I can't do quarter circles. And anything more complicated than a quarter circle, forget it. It just ain't happening.
It is not for everyone, and I am also like you in that I struggle playing traditional 2D fighters. I almost got that far. I have the original Street Fighter V on PlayStation 4. I got it pretty cheap, but I've never put it in my PS4. I've never touched it. I've never played it. So here I am talking about this game that I've never played, but I do like the soundtrack a whole lot, so I think that works out. I did like playing Street Fighter 4, though. I was part of that where it's I'll give it a go, and I won't go competitive, but I'll throw down some rounds with some friends and just have some dumb fun. But yeah, I have not tried Street Fighter V, so should be interesting to talk about, but yeah, our experience is limited, but again, we're here to mostly talk about the music and just give you some background about the game overall. I do remember, certainly, that Street Fighter V was originally intended to be revealed at PlayStation Experience 2014, yes, when that December conference of theirs was still a thing, and the trailer leaked a day early. Still the rumors before were that Street Fighter V was going to be announced. But it's true. It's real. December 5th, 2014. There it is. Street Fighter V as a console exclusive on PlayStation 4. Sony Computer Entertainment throwing money at Capcom to say, hey, we believe in the future of fighting games and esports. Bring your fighting game to our platform only. Leave those Xbox people out of it.
I still remember Wooly Madden over at Wooly Versus had this moment where he, the way he describes it is he didn't have a PS4, didn't really want to buy one. They announced Street Fighter V. An hour later, he owned a PS4.
I mean, that's the point. That's why the idea of money hatting works.
It worked.
Yeah,
it worked.
Absolutely. Much to some people's chagrin, but that's kind of why they do it, to get more people on a platform that they may not otherwise have. But Street Fighter V, when it eventually launched, overall the game is not without controversy. It became a prime example at the time of an incomplete game being released far too early. Like at the very bare bones of it, like people are like, why is this being released when it only has this much? Like,
it launched for that arcade mode.
Yeah, I mean, hardly any single player modes, even to the point where there was a single player cinematic story mode called A Shadow Falls. And yeah, it wasn't available at launch. It became a free title update on July 1st, 2016. So almost 5 months later, and it was not received well. People called it ridiculous, silly, and of course the idea of too little, too late. But that wasn't the end of it. There were shots of Cammy's intro, and then there was Armika's special that was changed from its beta version to really tone down the sexualization by launch. There was even a PC update that included a Capcom.sys rootkit. It was meant to prevent cheating, but any malware could have used it to execute kernel-level code on the PC. This was patched out, but still a huge oversight. Players discovered in May 2016 that Street Fighter V had 8 frames of latency built into it. Not good for competitive play. It took until June for Capcom to apologize, not only for their lack of communication, but that they weren't very clear about this. And it hasn't stopped. Honestly, if you want to be real picky about it, loot boxes were added to the game in June 2018, and beginning on December 11th, 2018, Capcom included in-game advertising. Yes,
Gross.
In a full release game, there needed to be in-game advertising for the esports scene and all that.
And I know some people have theories that, like, it's because they're experimenting with getting ready to take it free to play. I personally don't believe that. I don't think that's real. But at the same time, also, all right, fine. If somebody pays $60 for a game, don't give them in-game advertisements.
Absolutely.
Nobody's going to stand for that.
Yeah, it's a weird way and not an okay way of testing it out. I think it all kind of boils down to the fact that Capcom's been trying to make this fighting game, or at least experiment at this point in time, to make Street Fighter a game as a service. Every game wants to be a game as a service, a GAAS, because it's really been all about that. You know, they release these season packs of characters, and as Smash Brothers fans, we're familiar with the idea of a fighter pass, and you know, Street Fighter certainly had time to release packs and packs of characters. But what Nintendo hasn't done with this whole thing is say, oh, you can buy and unlock these characters anyway with the in-game fight money currency. This is getting too easy. Well, let's change up the algorithm so that fight money is harder to obtain, and then we'll push more people to get the actual money thrown our way for purchasing the downloadable content. Like, this is where you get the scummy part of games going right now with DLC and games as a service. Because, like, even if you wanted to purchase the DLC separately and not part of, you know, the pack itself, the season pack, if you add it all up, those are heinously expensive. So it just became overall problematic with the telling of the history of Street Fighter V.
They have not done well by this game, unfortunately. Which sucks because so many people were looking forward to this game.
And, you know, part of what it's a shame too is, like, the gameplay is apparently solid. People like the gameplay of it. It's just the product has been in a way, poorly managed. Yet at the same time, it has also been a success. I mean, there have been 4 seasons of character content, of character releases post-launch. Again, Arcade Edition covers through season 2, but you had 16 characters at launch for Street Fighter V. There are now like 35 total. So that's pretty crazy. You started with Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Dalsim, Vega, and Bison, Zangief, Cammy, Birdie, Karen, Nash, and Armika as veterans, and then the 4 newcomers of Fang, Laura, Nekali, and Rashid. Though they're new. Season 1 brought back probably the most missed veterans of the group. You had Alex, Balrog, Guile, Ibuki, Juri, and Urien. Season 2 had Akuma return as a veteran, but otherwise new characters of Abigail, Ed, Colin, Manat, and Zeku. Season 3 had Blanca, Cody, Sagat, and Sakura as veterans, with Falk and G as new characters. And then Season 4 has been kind of a weird one. You have Kage as a new character who, at least in the story mode, is the embodiment of Ryu's Satsui no Hado, and he becomes his own separate entity after Ryu purges it from himself. But Capcom has not talked about a season pass for 2019 characters. In these past seasons, they'd have shadows and silhouettes and all that and tease out all these characters, but just Kage so far this year, which may kind of hint at maybe it's time to start winding things down. Street Fighter V overall was reviewed generally favorably, I guess, at launch, with a Metacritic of 77 on PS4, 74 on PC. The graphics and gameplay were praised. Like, the core of the game itself is a good Street Fighter game, according to all these critics, but it was, as I've said, hammered for a lack of content and unstable online performance at launch. Now, Arcade Edition, markedly better. We're talking a Metacritic of 87 on PS4 and 89 on PC, so 10 to 15 points better, depending on like where you're looking at it. I mean, even at its most critical, Push Square's review, which gave it an 8 out of 10, said, quote, "There's a cynical part of us that says Arcade Edition is little more than a glorified Season 3 update, but the simple truth is that there's never been a better time to jump in." So yeah, like, the game is solid, but if we're talking about it winning awards, granted, as improved as Arcade Edition was, it was nominated for, Best Fighting Game at 2018 for multiple award shows, including the Game Awards. But you know what? It didn't really win any of them because Dragon Ball FighterZ was the best fighting game that year. So we'll get to talking about that and why it was, more critically acclaimed in that sense, and whether it's fans and critics. Street Fighter V's legacy has been a little interesting. I mean, it broke EVO's record of registrations in 2016. Over 5,000 entrants, which sounds crazy right now, especially. It dropped to 2,622 in 2017. In 2018, it fell behind Dragon Ball FighterZ with 2,484 entrants. And now it's fallen behind Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Entrants for EVO 2019 for Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, 1,929. So yeah, I think it's a precipitous fall. And if you want to just talk about the history of the game, like, solid game, good game, marketed and planned poorly with a lot of controversy, and that's kind of marred the history, I think.
I didn't know the drop was that heavy. That's kind of sad to know about, honestly. But Capcom kind of brought it upon themselves.
Well, you hope that, how well they're doing now, they've learned from this and we can maybe see future iterations kind of recover from that a little bit. At least, the expectations won't be as high because, I mean, again, Street Fighter 4 was very, very popular. How can they deliver for Street Fighter 5? All this pressure, and they just found every way to just kind of get in their own way. When we're talking about the music of Street Fighter V, last week, told you we were going to be talking about Hideyuki Fukasawa. Not talking about Hideyuki Fukasawa this week. Before, when we're kind of planning out the research, everyone kind of had pegged his name to just the very cursory research for Street Fighter V. It's like, oh yeah, he's the composer of the soundtrack. Doing more research, that is not so. He is on the soundtrack team, certainly. But it would not be appropriate to talk about Hideyuki Fukasawa this week. Plus, then we get to save him for a little game called Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and I'd rather talk about him, that game in the future.
Yeah.
But to talk about Street Fighter V, I think the more appropriate composer to talk about is Masahiro Aoki. Masahiro Aoki, born October 22nd, 1984 in Osaka Prefecture in Japan. He is a composer, but he's mostly known for being a guitar player. And Masahiro Aoki goes under the alias of Godspeed. Now, I had never heard of Godspeed before, but apparently he's quite a figure when it comes to Capcom music, and at least starting as someone who loved to cover video game music growing up, but his early time learning music, he learned how to play the piano at age 5, he switched over to guitar at 14, and he was self-taught from there. Whether it was, composing his own music or learning how to play songs, his main quote that in an interview, he said he really wanted to make the music that he wanted to hear, that he thought was cool. And it's like, you know what? Forget what other people think are cool. I'm going to play what I think is great. And that's such a cool way of going about things. So he listened at home to a lot of classical piano songs and game soundtracks as inspiration for making instrumental music. Some of his rock guitar inspirations included Tak Matsumoto from the group Biz? B''Z, never heard of it before. Yngwie Malmsteen, Paul Gilbert, and Steve Vai. So he started as a doujin artist. A lot of people referred to him as such online in interviews. Basically, he was making his own unofficial covers of these video game music tracks. And he said he was inspired by Square RPGs such as Final Fantasy and Romancing Saga. He also said, I also love the music from Rockman a lot.
Hold up. Are people that do game music covers still considered doujin artists in Japan? I thought that was just people who wrote fan manga.
I thought so too, but the term was applied to this? Maybe I'm misinformed, but the name doujin artist was thrown around in different interviews with Aoki here.
Huh? Learn something new every day.
I guess so. So it's fitting that Aoki loved, Rockman, Mega Man music a lot because he ended up joining the Capcom sound team in 2008. After a year of unsuccessfully looking for music work, he had graduated with a degree in electronics, but he really wanted to work with music. And so here he is now at Capcom, working on these game projects. He is also the co-founder of the Mega Man music tribute band, Rockmen, with Yasumasa Kitagawa and Mitsuhiro Takano. So these Capcom music people join together and again make their own covers of Mega Man music, but almost in a way semi-officially tied into Capcom. It's certainly interesting. Good covers, absolutely. Go check those out from Rockmen. He's also involved in guitar album projects such as G5, God, G-O-D, which is Guitarists on Demand, and Next. On his YouTube and SoundCloud profiles, he goes by Godspeed 8040, and he released an album in August of last year, August 8th, 2018. He released an instrumental album called The Game Changer. So you can find that, I think, on Amazon Music as a part of their unlimited sort of listening. If you like this kind of music and you want to listen to more from Godspeed. So, Masahiro Aoki, Godspeed. Some of his discography for games that he's worked on. Monster Hunter Tri. He said he only made one track for it and it was accepted, but this game was being made as he was being brought on at Capcom and was all part of his training. But his real first big project involves the Sengoku Basara series, and he started with Sengoku Basara 3. You may be wondering, this is the second straight week that the composer Peter's talked about has worked on Sengoku Basara at Capcom. Yes, Ray Kondo from Tease Music did work on this game as well. So I found it very interesting when in an interview, Aoki said, quote, "When I began participating on the project, being Sengoku Basara, I was quite worried about how I'd make music that was similar and some to that made by T's music. But after a while, my consciousness shifted over to making music for fields that T's music hadn't made before. And thus I arrived at the conclusion that it wouldn't be a mistake to incorporate a guitar sound, and that it would be the most effective contribution I'd be able to offer. So, unknowingly in back-to-back weeks, Rei Kondo, Masahiro Aoki, working together on this project. And in a way, not like jealousy, but like being worried about like stacking up to Rei Kondo. I just found that really interesting.
It's almost as good as that one week we did 2 games that the same composer worked on. When we did Uprising and Danganronpa.
Yeah, now that was still the best. That was still the best for sure. Aoki would continue to have Mega Man involved, though. There was the iOS game several years back, Mega Man Crossover, Xover. So we did some music for that. He'd go on and work with Inti Creates for Mighty Number 9, and of course, Street Fighter V. There isn't much historical research on this soundtrack. Japanese games kind of like to keep things pretty tight-lipped, especially for recent games. Go figure. Hasn't been much time for people to detach and tell their stories, as may also be the trend for the next game.
Boy, will it.
But what I do know is that the composers had really free reign to do what they wanted with themes, and there's a lot of people involved on the soundtrack, but this was only for the new characters. Lots of new characters, so they kind of had some flexibility there. But of course, when you're talking about the legacy characters from Street Fighter, you're certainly bound to certain melodies, to certain feelings, just themes overall. So that does make sense, but it's a big composing team on Street Fighter V and then into Arcade Edition. Of course, with Masahiro Aoki, Hideyuki Fukasawa, he's on the team. He's just not really a big part of it. There's also Keiki Kobayashi, Takatsugu Wakabayashi, and Zach Zinger.
One of these things is not like the other.
And we'll certainly hear that when it comes to his contributions on the soundtrack, because there is something there in our Critical 5 tracks. And let's get to those Critical 5 tracks. I think we have to start with the opening cinematic song from the original Street Fighter V release, aptly titled Street Fighter V. Now this is Masahiro Aoki. This, when you're talking about composed by Aoki, arranged by Aoki, these kind of shredding, wailing guitars, this is him. So just an amazing sound. I don't think this fits in an opening cinematic per se, especially when you look up the opening cinematic on YouTube and it's very off balanced by like really prioritizing the sound effects in the different scenes and whatnot. So in a way, like the song kind of gets buried a little bit by those. But I think it's just an eargasm of a track. It's fantastic, especially with this opening drop in the clip when it hits. Oh, it sounds so cool. And I think you're going to hear a lot of similarities as far as like the sound or the vibe or the feel with this soundtrack and Dragon Ball FighterZ. Dragon Ball FighterZ may go a little harder into the guitars, whereas Street Fighter kind of has more of a range. But yeah, you're talking about hard rock songs in this game, and it just sounds so cool.
I think I overall, just as a cohesive product, I think I like the Arcade Edition intro better.
Mm-hmm.
Like much better. Just like in just about every way. I like the song better. I like the video better. I like all that.
It's probably a little more fitting to what Street Fighter is as a series.
A little bit, but this is still a pretty good song, and I mean, it's called Street Fighter V. What are you supposed to do? Not put it on the critical tracks list for Street Fighter V?
It's pretty important. When you're booting up the disc for the first time, what are you probably going to hear for the first time? So it's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. we'll have to get into some character themes, of course. Like, that's really what drives the soundtrack. It's characters and stage themes. And for character themes, I can think of no better track than the theme of Ken. So, of course, the classic Yoko Shimomura composed track, arranged by Masahiro Aoki. I think some people online, I read like a ranked list of like, we ranked, the 16 character themes from Street Fighter V. And this person had this as the worst.
They're crazy.
Theme?
They're nuts.
They're like, oh, this just does what every video game remix composer has done with Ken's theme. It doesn't sound... No. Ken's design in this game may be awful, but this theme melts my goddamn face off.
This is the best version of Ken's theme that has ever been. I don't care what anybody says. Every version of Ken's theme has pretty much been pretty good. This is the best one.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, like, this track is fantastic. And I think it shows you, like, yeah, there's the classic Ken theme that I think any fan of Street Fighter knows very, very well, but I think this just turns it up another notch, and it's all because of Aoki here with his arrangement.
I really wish this version had been in Smash. I really wish they would have put anything that, like, any... I get it. The whole soundtrack of 2 is in there. I understand. There are other Street Fighter games, and I really wanted this song, this particular version of Ken's theme to be in Smash, and it's not, and it makes me sad.
It would have been so cool. Oh, I totally agree. Absolutely agree. Another character theme here for number 3 on the Critical Tracks. Theme of Rainbow Mika. So yeah, our Mika gets her theme, also arranged by Masahiro Aoki. Mika returns from a previous Street Fighter game. I want to say it was Alpha, I think
so. That sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Granted, she's turned up a little bit in her character design as well. But it's a good theme that this is a theme you can slap your butt along to. Because that's her big thing in this game.
Every year during EVO, we will watch, if our Mika shows up on screen at any point, myself and our friend Curb will just sort of sit there and just shout, "Do the butt! Do the butt!"
Do the butt.
Because we wanted the butt to show up on television. Because the first year that it was on HBO, that special was never done. Even though the winner, I believe, was using Mika, like the winner of the tournament. It was never done on screen. And so we had to show our friend Seth. We had to show him a video of the special, because what we're talking about is the her special where she and I forget her partner's name.
Oh, I don't know either.
But she has a wrestling partner that will come out during some of her specials and also serves as sort of a built-in assist. And for her big special, they throw their opponent up in the air, and then they both do butt slams on either side of their head. It's Peach something. I don't remember what it's called. Look, don't blame me, all right? I'm not the street man.
But to start it off, she slaps her butt. And like that was kind of what got toned down a little bit. Like she does it kind of off screen in, patches and all that. But do the butt.
We showed him a video of that. He had never seen it. And he just shouted, "Why was that not shown on television?"
Gee, I wonder.
It was so good.
But the track here, like it's definitely catchy, and it's one that really caught my ear, and I like it a whole lot. And I just think we had to talk about the butt. We gotta put the butt in there.
This theme is genuinely one of my favorite themes in the game. Armika's theme is so catchy and high energy, and I love it. I like Ken's theme better, but I still love it.
Another theme that I think deserves to be here on the Critical 5 is Theme of Rashid. See, here is Hideyuki Fukasawa. See, he wasn't gone. He's here. He's in this game, and he made a pretty good track. I mean, certainly a lot of Middle Eastern influences, some Arabic instrumentation here. But, it gets a good vibe, gets it going, and then it gets to a certain point. And Rashido! Everything is about Rashido in this song.
I find it very funny that Fukasawa happens to have done the song that is the theme of the character. Most people were like, this is the Street Fighter V character that would fit the best in Marvel vs. Capcom. He wasn't in Marvel vs. Capcom, but he should have been.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where I think, just seeing the conversation online about the Street Fighter V soundtrack, like everyone is Rashido, like everything. Give it this song, if only for that moment. It's an important one, I think, for sure.
Absolutely.
But we'll end the Critical 5 here with a stage tune, and for the first time, it's actually one from the Arcade Edition soundtrack. I mean, these first four, they're in the original Street Fighter V, but Arcade Edition, of course, expands the soundtrack, more characters, more stages. Stages like Frosty Boulevard theme. And I don't know what it is, like when we talk about the stages, that we'll talk about here, there are apparently round 1 and round 2 variants, and we just like the round 1 ones better. You'd think with round 2, things are more hype, things are more intense. No, like there's a kind of purity to these round 1 cuts, like this jazz and how good it is. This is composed by Zach Zinger. Here he is. He does the jazz stuff. Here on the Arcade Edition OST. But the trumpets are going wild. This is supposed to be set in New York. And yeah, I can think of no better sort of theme of a track for like New York City than jazz. It shows you the range of sounds. And Joe, you'll have a couple that really push those boundaries of genre types on the Street Fighter V soundtrack. But yeah, after all these guitars and Rashido, like, would you expect like jazz trumpets and wailing and just going for it? No, but I love it.
I mean, considering a couple of the songs on my games list, I'm starting to think this might just be a thing fighting games do. But yeah, no, it's definitely one of those like way different than you would expect based on everything before it. Songs, which, I mean, we like to highlight those a lot, and jazz, never a bad time for a little jazz piece from a game.
If there's jazz, it's going to find a way on my list. Like you and piano,
yeah,
me and jazz.
like me and piano. Every time.
So let's talk about some of those tracks on the cutting room floor. Joe, as I said before, you got a couple here that really just kind of expand the gamut of what's on this soundtrack.
I am a very big fan of Theme of Ed.
So what you gotta do is put your powers to the test. Time is passing, so you better swing your time the best. So who you gonna be when the Reaper come knocking? Actions speak louder than words, so stop talking. Yeah, so watch me break out of this cage. I fight now, I won't change. Yeah, and it's the passing of the days. So get back and just get up out my way.
I used to be one of those people where I was like, it's country and rap, I don't like those. Nope. Rap especially, I'm not a big fan. And then it turns out, oh no, it's just, I wasn't listening to the right rap, the rap that was made for me, because as time went on, I discovered stuff like the Persona 3 soundtrack, or, I'm sure there's another example that I can't think of now.
Killer Instinct 2013.
Killer Instinct, yes, absolutely, that one. And then this, I love this song. I'll drive down the road and I can sort of rap to this song. Not really. I'm white and I have zero flow. You know this more than anyone. But like, it's just one of those songs that you listen to it and it's just like, actions speak louder than words, so stop talking.
It definitely gets you pumped. This one's composed by Daniel Lindholm. So yeah, even more people on the soundtrack, and the rap is performed by Cal Combs, or Caleb Combs, again, on that arcade edition OST. One of the few interviews I did find about research for the soundtrack was with Daniel Lindholm, because he did a couple other characters, like Zeku, I think also he did the theme for. But for this one, for Theme of Ed in particular, he said it was inspired by Eminem's Lose Yourself. So much to the point that internally Capcom got really worried about copyright infringement. And I can kind of hear it, but I really think those fears were maybe a little overblown.
That's beautiful. My other one is also a stage theme, Forgotten Waterfall. This has always kind of actually been one of my favorite songs. Even before the arcade edition stuff happened, I really, really liked this in the original. And I think it's just the instrumentation more than anything. This is another one of those where you mentioned there were round 2 versions. You sent me the round 2 version to be like, so which one specifically are you talking about? And I was like, I have never heard the round 2 version before. So I don't know where it is. I don't know. I've never even heard it.
This one's composed by Keiki Kobayashi. I hear this, and it's supposed to represent the New Zealand map. Mm-hmm. But I just think Naruto. This is straight out of Naruto anime.
I keep having moments where when I go on family vacations and stuff, I kind of want to record a vlog to go along with my vacation, mostly for myself. It would be good video editing practice and all that kind of thing. But this is always the song that pops in my mind where it's all right, so when I get a small montage of me getting on the plane and the plane taking off and flying in and us driving around, this is always the song that my brain's like, this is the one. This is the perfect one to play.
I can hear that. That would be really cool for sure. You mentioned the intro cinematic for Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, and yeah, the doom doom doo 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 doo. It's thematically better for Street Fighter, but on a purely music perspective, I actually like Arcade Edition's main menu theme. So we got some more Masahiro Aoki up in here on the Arcade Edition soundtrack. I am just so impressed, just incredibly so, by the acoustic guitar playing here. Yeah, I can play the guitar, but this is wild. Are you kidding me? It sounds so cool. And it just makes me think, like, him going back to, like, I like to make music that I think is cool. Aoki, you do you. Absolutely. More of this. This is awesome.
Turns out he has good taste.
Absolutely. I also like Theme of Falk. This one composed by Keiki Kobayashi on the Arcade Edition soundtrack. Falk is a character released in Season 3. The song has a pretty slow start with just this pulsing bass kick. But here in the clip, when it drops to that full, heavy bass drop, yeah, I'm all about it. I am so down with this. And I think you'll hear some of my choices in the next game. Like, I really like it when we get, like, synth stuff going in these sort of fighting game tunes. So yeah, I'm all about this for sure. I've
never even played as Falk, all things considered. So
shout out to Kira Buckland, voice of Falk. That's super cool.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah,
she's good. I like her.
She got into Street Fighter. What will I never forget about the game? Well, considering I never played it, that's pretty tough. Because yeah, as someone who just never embraced it, I'll just remember the controversy. And that sucks to say. Like, you should remember, like, how great the gameplay is and whatnot. But as someone who, like, followed video game news and never got around to playing this, like, Street Fighter V had a way of just popping its head up where it really shouldn't have belonged in certain places here and there. But like I mentioned earlier, I have to think that with the way Capcom is succeeding now, not relying really on these predatory practices. And we're seeing this kind of Street Fighter, the DLC and games as a service thing kind of start to wane away a little bit. But I mean, God, with games like Resident Evil 2 and Monster Hunter World and Devil May Cry 5 and games like this, I think you kind of have to be excited for a Street Fighter 6 for next generation. I'd imagine it's going to happen. I think you got to be excited just to be excited for Capcom and hope that they've learned from this, honestly.
Give your fighting game division more than $10 of budget.
Yeah, maybe making Marvel versus Capcom that doesn't struggle like that. Whole other thing for a whole other time, I'm sure.
For me, I more remember watching Street Fighter V more than I remember playing it. Evo is always a highlight of my year, and Street Fighter V generally has been the finisher, though last year wasn't great. The year before that, though, I remember having a great time watching it, same with the year before that. But of course, last year it had the unfortunate problem of being put up against my game, so...
And we'll get to talk about that soon. But if you want to check out Street Fighter V Arcade Edition this year, it's the third to last game on Sunday at Finals Day on Evo. So it's, Smash Bros. Ultimate is last, Tekken 7 is before that, and Street Fighter V Arcade Edition before that.
I think this is basically the first time in years that Street Fighter has not been the finale of Evo. It's insane.
Yeah, you're right. It's crazy. And we will certainly see how Smash Bros. Handles that position and what Nintendo has to say about it. But that being said, we'll get to transition to your game here. We like to cover, a fan cover, fan remix on OC Remix on YouTube related to the game that we just finished talking about. And I think for Evo Hype Week, we have talked about a Little V-Mills song before, but with two games that go so hard into the guitar, it's a Little V-Mills week, y'all.
Yeah, on accident too. We both just happened to pick Little V-Mills songs.
I think it fits perfectly, and in this case for Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, we're going to talk about his cover here, showing you Rashid's theme. Get some of that Rashido with Little V-Mills featuring Toxic X Eternity. Hope you enjoy. We'll be right back.
Rashid.
let's get this week stuff out of the way. Let's just scoop it on over to the side.
Aw.
It's okay, Street Fighter. You had your moment. But we're going to talk about Dragon Ball.
The real best fighting game of 2018.
The game that ate Capcom's lunch in 2 separate ways in 1 year. So, let's talk about Dragon Ball FighterZ. Originally released for the PC, PS4, and Xbox One on January 26, 2018, and later releasing on the Switch in September of that same year. Dragon Ball FighterZ is a fighting game about Dragon Ball characters. If you hadn't guessed that yet, that's the theme. So, much the same way that Spider-Man, which I talked about a couple weeks ago, was the most famous superhero in the world, Dragon Ball is probably the most famous anime on Earth. Because I could not find a huge amount on the development, we will get to some of what I did find later. I do want to give a short history lesson, much like I did with Spider-Man, because Dragon Ball is so much more than just this one game. So, Dragon Ball started as a manga by mangaka Akira Toriyama in 1984. It followed a young boy named Goku as he traveled the world learning martial arts and searching for the Dragon Balls, which were 7 magical orbs that are able to grant any wish. From there, in 1986, Dragon Ball got an anime adaptation, and the series eventually made it stateside in 1995. That's right, it took almost 10 years for us to get what Japan got, because you gotta remember, this is before the anime boom. This is right around when TV stations and licensors in the West were starting to think, maybe there is something to this anime thing. This Japan stuff.
Japanimation.
Now, this is not the dub that we know, because in 1995 it would have been the Ocean dub. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard the Ocean dub.
I have.
It's, it sure is a thing.
Big Green!
Oh, boy. And apparently there was a dub before that, or around the same time, by Harmony Gold, which is even worse, and, renamed a bunch of characters. I don't know a huge amount about that one, and I like to keep it that way, all things considered. And yeah, the Ocean dub sucks. People can fight me. Really, the only thing that people believe is the real saving grace of the Ocean dub is Vegeta's voice actor is pretty good, but it kind of... The problem with Vegeta's voice in the Ocean dub is that I don't think they realized he was not going to be a villain forever, and so they gave him this very evil-sounding voice. And it doesn't work when he's a good guy.
That's why Chris Sabat's better.
Yeah, Chris Sabat is Vegeta. The dub we know was actually done by Funimation, and started in 2001 with the original Dragon Ball. And then for Dragon Ball Z, I guess they picked up where the Ocean dub stopped, which was right around when Goku gets to Namek, and they wouldn't go back and redub that other stuff until 2005.
Wow.
When the original series was dubbed and released by Funimation, that's when most people started to really know Dragon Ball. It's why when people think Goku nowadays in English, they think Sean Shamel, they think Chris Sabat as Vegeta, they think just a number of very popular voices now, some of the most popular characters in anime in general. The anime is split into 4 different shows. You got Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, and Dragon Ball Super. Dragon Ball, again, follows Goku through his childhood until he becomes a young adult and marries a woman named Chi-Chi. Dragon Ball Z finds him as a dad, for better or for worse, with a son of his own. He also learns that he is an alien called a Saiyan. And this is the series that introduces what is probably the most iconic thing out of all of Dragon Ball, the Super Saiyan form. And also introduces Vegeta, who is nowadays basically the secondary main character of Dragon Ball. The show also got a remake in 2009 called Dragon Ball Kai, and while I adore the original with all of my heart, if you're looking to get into Dragon Ball Z, Kai is probably your best bet.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good way to go. I have fond memories watching Kai in college when it was coming out, still subbed. It's a good time.
I watched the original show all the way through, all of them. Watch Kai. Don't be me. Dragon Ball GT was the first series that was not based on any manga and follows Goku after he has been wished back into kid form. It's a bad show, and it's not worth your time.
But the opening theme, though.
Sure, the opening theme. It's the Grand Tour.
Grand Tour.
That song is so weird. The only good thing to come out of GT is the scenes where Vegeta is a dad, and that's it. That is literally all. There's this fantastic scene where Vegeta is driving around with his daughter Bra, or Boa as she is in the English dub of GT. I believe they have undone that in Super. She is now Bra, as she is supposed to be. And these guys drive up and start hitting on her. And they're like, why don't you lose the old timer? Get in the car with some real men. And Vegeta just casually pulls up next to their car, reaches in, yanks off their steering wheel, and throws it off a cliff.
Is this where he just has a mustache?
He just has a mustache. He has a mustache in GT.
Yeah.
And there's a whole scene where he shaves it off and tries to see if Chi-Chi will notice. And Bulma's like, yeah, that's Vegeta for you. But it's not a good show. And after that, Dragon Ball anime just sort of stopped for years. What are our experiences with Dragon Ball? It's my favorite anime franchise of all time.
Oh, wow. It's not up there for me, but it was actually a series like when it was coming out here stateside. I was trying to avoid it for a while. I don't know why I did. It's just like when you're a young kid and you're done, it's like, I'm cooler than that, what all my friends are into. Like, I was stupid. I got around to playing Budokai on GameCube, and like, oh, this is fun. And then I watched some of the show, I was like, oh, this is fun. So, yeah, couldn't avoid, learning about the different arcs of Z, whether it's, the Frieza, the Vegeta saga, the Frieza saga, the Cell saga, Buu saga. I mean, just going from there. And then, yeah, I was a big Toonami watcher. So, yeah, you come across GT, and you're watching things like Yu Yu Hakusho at the time, and you realize, oh, Justin Cook is Dende. It's like, okay, all right, little things like that. So I like it. I have not seen any of what has come in the past few years for the Dragon Ball anime that you'll get to talking about. So I have no experience with that. But yeah, I like Dragon Ball Z. It's good stuff.
I grew up watching it on Toonami. Just pretty much every day I would go over to my great grandparents' house. I don't remember why I went over there so much, but I sure did. And, she just had a back room with a TV in it, and I would turn that on. I would watch a bunch of Dragon Ball Z, and I got real into it, despite my mother very much not being a fan of it because it was very violent.
Violence. Yep.
I still remember we took a trip to New York when I was a kid, and I tried to watch one of the Majin Buu episodes, and she made me turn it off because it was too violent. She didn't like it. Didn't stop me.
My parents got really weird about Digimon because we watched a lot of like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh when I was growing up, and then it was just like, no, Digimon is too much. I'm like, what are you talking about?
See, for me, that was Power Rangers. I wasn't allowed to watch Power Rangers as a kid.
Same, but I still snuck over to friends' houses and watched it anyway. So,
to this day, I've still never seen any Power Rangers anything.
You're not missing much.
That's what I hear. So I love Dragon Ball. I would eventually go and rewatch the entire original series as a kid. Back in the days when I could only watch like 3 episodes every hour because it was on Mega Video, and that had a limit to how long you could watch within a certain span of time. I watched the whole series like that. And then I would eventually watch all of Z as well. It would take me like 3 or 4 years to get through it. I am sort of caught up with the dub of Super, as much as Toei will let me be at least. And I have seen the past 3 films in theaters. I love Dragon Ball so much. Even at E3, when me and Matt went to our Bandai Namco appointment, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is not coming out on Switch. And we write for NWR, which now so do you. Congrats.
Yay! Thank you.
We write for Nintendo World Report, so we were really just there for the Switch stuff. But then when we ran out of Switch stuff and still had some time before our next appointment, we both just sort of said, I want to go play Dragon Ball now. And that was for me. I played it for me. So needless to say, quite a big Dragon Ball fan. I would be wearing my Goku shirt right now, but it's dirty. Unfortunately, but I do have one. So back to the story at hand. The anime stopped for a real long time. We got GT in 2005, and after GT and Z ended, nothing. But then, tragedy. Because in 2009, a live-action film based on Dragon Ball was released. It is called Dragon Ball Evolution. I saw it in theaters.
Oh, no.
Granted, this was the point before I thought it would be good, or after I would have thought it would have been good. I was old enough to know, oh, this is going to be a train wreck. Let's do this. And it is.
I did the same thing with The Last Airbender. So I get it. I get it.
So Dragon Ball Evolution is generally considered one of the worst anime live-action adaptations that has ever been made. Ever. It is so bad that in 2016, the guy who wrote it issued a public apology for how bad it was. It is rumored that the movie was so bad, and Akira Toriyama himself disliked it so much that it is directly responsible for the release of Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods in 2013, because he saw Evolution and thought, I cannot let this be the last piece of Dragon Ball media that comes out.
Oh my gosh, yeah, in theaters. When your legacy is on the line, you probably want to do something about it.
So Battle of Gods, released in 2013, it introduced the character Beerus, who is the god of destruction, and the most powerful character in the Dragon Ball universe. Sort of. We'll get to that. Which eventually led to a sequel being released because it did so well, called Resurrection F, which was about Frieza being wished back to life. Frieza being one of the most famous antagonists in Dragon Ball history. And them fighting him. That was the whole movie. There's a lot of fighting in Dragon Ball. That's most of it.
So it makes sense there's a fighting game.
Yeah. Eventually, Resurrection F led into a full anime series being made called Dragon Ball Super. The first two arcs of which were just readaptations of Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. And then new stuff after that. And then there was a movie right after that called Dragon Ball Super Broly, which took the terrible character of Broly and made him a good character. Somehow, against all odds, which I also saw that in theaters. So, there's a lot. Dragon Ball's a lot. I legitimately do not have the stamina or time to get into everything about Dragon Ball. That is a cursory history lesson. I'm very sorry. I just like Dragon Ball a whole lot. But we got to focus in a little bit because much like Spider-Man, again, Dragon Ball has had a ton of video games. The first Dragon Ball game was called Dragon Ball Dragon Daihikyo, which was released in September of 1986 for the Super Cassette Vision, which I don't know what that is.
That almost sounds made up.
It sure does. I've never heard of it. Technically, the first Dragon Ball game to come out in the West was in 1988 for the NES. But even though it had been released in 1986 in Japan as Dragon Ball Shenlong no Nazo, an actual licensed Dragon Ball title, when it came to America, we removed all mention of Dragon Ball and reskinned it into a game based on Journey to the West called Dragon Power, because this was those days. Which I guess sort of makes sense, because nobody in the West knew what Dragon Ball was yet. But also, then why did you bring a Dragon Ball game here? we would get an actual Dragon Ball game in the West in 1997 called Dragon Ball GT Final Bout for the PlayStation. It's a bad game, and also GT would not air here for another 8 years, so I don't really know why. I don't know why this game was brought here. But hey, once Funimation picked it up, though, it became the insanely popular juggernaut here that it had already been for years in Japan. And so we started getting the games regularly. Again, much like Spider-Man, a majority of those were bad. As much as I love the Budokai Tenkaichi series, they're not great.
Yeah, Budokai 3 is where it's at. Once it goes to Tenkaichi and they go 3D, and that gets a little wonky, but the Budokai games are a great time, and 3 is definitely the best of them.
There are, like Spider-Man, there are a couple of examples of pretty good games, or at least passable games, but for the most part, they're just sort of games that were kind of leaning on the license in hopes that they'd sell copies.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you start playing with other genres, it goes awry.
And there are a ton of genres, too. There have been Dragon Ball Z RPGs, fighting games, beat-em-ups, probably a couple of dating sims. I didn't look, but I'm gonna say there are.
Chi-Chi deserves better.
She sure does. I'd play a game where I can date Vegeta. It probably wouldn't be that. It would probably be like dating Chi-Chi and Bulma and them. But point is, majority of Dragon Ball games, they're either okay or they're not good. Which is why on June 11th, 2017, the anime world felt a massive tremor because at Microsoft's E3 press conference, Arc System Works, or ArcSys as they are known for short, who are the kings of anime fighting games, mind you. If you've never heard of ArcSys, they make Guilty Gear, BlazBlue, they made Persona 4 Arena. They know what they're doing. They announced that they were making a fighting game based on Dragon Ball. And everybody lost their minds.
That was an incredible trailer.
It was such a good trailer, and just the thought of, ArcSys is making Dragon Ball. Oh, this is going to be the best Dragon Ball game ever made? The game features nearly every protagonist and central antagonist from Dragon Ball Z, as well as some characters from Dragon Ball Super. And it has also gotten 2 seasons of DLC, and yet no original Dragon Ball characters are in either of those seasons. Harumph. It also includes the original character Android 21, a female android designed by Toriyama himself, who, upon being announced, took the internet by storm to...
I don't know if it was to Bowsette levels, but yeah, quite a lot. People wanted her to step on them, put them in her mouth.
Yeah, they wanted her to eat them. It was weird. But she's also... I also kind of can't blame people because she's a fantastic design. She serves as the game's primary antagonist for the story mode, which, if you're wondering, I'm not going to talk about the story mode because it's bad and I haven't played it. It's not fun to play. It's just there. So the launch roster for Dragon Ball FighterZ was androids 16, 18, 21, Beerus, Captain Ginyu, Cell, Frieza, Teen and Adult Gohan, Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan Blue Goku, Goku Black, Gotenks, Hit, Majin Buu and Kid Buu, Krillin, Nappa, Piccolo, Tien, Trunks, Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta, and Yamcha. Season 1 DLC added Android 17, Bardock, Broly in his Dragon Ball Z design, Cooler, regular non-Super Saiyan Goku, and regular non-Super Saiyan Vegeta. Sure.
Because you need more Goku and Vegeta, I guess.
Sure do. Forget the fact that they are technically at least 5 characters each. Vegito and Zamasu. And in Season 2, they added the super version of Broly, Gogeta. I've never known how to pronounce that. I'm pretty sure it's Gogeta.
I would have assumed Gogeta because Vegeta. But
Me too, but I've been told I'm wrong on both accounts. I don't know. Kid Goku, not Dragon Ball version, GT version, because drive that knife further. Jiren and Videl. There's also, I believe, one more character that is not announced, and I believe the current rumor is Janemba, but we don't know for sure.
Yeah, I've heard Janemba as well.
According to the devs, let's get into some actual couple of things I was able to find, because I was able to find exactly one interview about the development of Dragon Ball FighterZ. According to the devs, the hardest challenge during development was getting the graphics to look just right. And if you've seen gameplay of Dragon Ball FighterZ, it just looks like a fight from the show happening on screen. It is actually incredible.
I mean, all the references to actual panels that they make for super moves and things like that, the lengths they go to are just incredible.
I really love, have you ever seen the fixed camera version of some of the supers?
Oh gosh, no.
There's the one that I remember is because for all of the dramatic angles and stuff, they will change body proportions of characters because you're not going to see that. The camera hides that. It just makes it look really cool. So if you mod the game to keep the camera where it is when a super happens, Teen Gohan's special, where he does the big father-son Kamehameha that killed Cell in the show, his hand gets huge, like the size of his body. It's really funny. But like, again, normally you would never see that because the camera work is so good and it works so hard to make sure that this game looks like Dragon Ball. It is so impressive. And they also, on that note, wanted to include as much fan service as they possibly could. For instance, some characters have dramatic finishes. For instance, if Goku beats Frieza in a certain way, it will then play a scene that mirrors the end of their fight in the show.
That's awesome.
Frieza throwing a blast at him, Goku flying off slowly and turning around and shouting, "You fool!" and blasting him to pieces. And there are multiple ones like that. I believe if you kill Kid Buu with a spirit bomb, you'll also get one of those. There's a ton of them. But there's also small stuff, like in the show, Frieza at one point throws these red energy discs at Goku and tries to trick him into having them boomerang back and hitting him from behind, but they miss and they hit Frieza instead. And so when Frieza uses that move in the game, when they come back, they can hit Frieza and do damage. And then, most importantly, they wanted to make sure the game was accessible to new players. Because they had the probably correct assumption that the overlap between fighting game players and Dragon Ball fans, probably not the biggest overlap there could be. So they made the controls simpler. They implemented a 3v3 format, much like the Marvel games, Marvel vs. Capcom games. So that fans could play as many different characters in one match as they wanted. And they also implemented features like the Super Dash to help new players learn the game faster, and also to just sort of make it so that fights still look really cool and are super fun, even if you're not really good at the game.
And it's interesting you mentioned Marvel vs. Capcom, because I think that was part of the excitement as well, seeing that trailer, is that, look, we're coming off 2017 and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite disappointed greatly. Mm-hmm. So when Dragon Ball comes on the scene as a fighter that's 3v3 team battle, everyone lost their mind.
Yeah, and it's generally considered that FighterZ ate Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite's lunch super hard. The game was reviewed extremely highly upon release, being called both the best Dragon Ball game of all time, correct, and one of the best fighting games in years. Debatable, but in my opinion, correct. Its lowest Metacritic score is currently the PC version that sits at a 85. While its highest is, surprisingly, the Switch version, sitting at 88.
Good for Switch.
Yeah, that's very surprising to me. I still haven't bought it on Switch, but I am planning to. 1 week after release, the game had already shipped 2 million copies, making it the fastest selling Dragon Ball game of all time. And it also later set a record on Steam for the highest number of concurrent users for a fighting game. By March 2019, apparently the game had sold over 4 million copies.
That's pretty awesome for a fighting game.
Oh, yeah. Fighting games don't tend to sell super well because they're kind of a niche genre. So, boy, that's a lot. The game also took the esports world by storm. I believe it broke viewer records at EVO 2018. Just like Melee had done a couple of years before. And I watched that top 8. It was one of the most hyped top 8s I've ever seen, ever, in all my years of watching EVO. So cool. And it also led to the rise of Sonic Fox as our new Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
Which if you've never seen Sonic Fox play this game or just generally be himself, he's a real cool dude and he's so talented.
Yeah, he's one of the best fighting game players in the world, bar none.
Unfortunately, this success was short-lived, as big tournaments suddenly began to be shut down near the end of 2018 for seemingly no reason. Many speculate this was Toei Animation's doing, who are the license holders for Dragon Ball. We don't know for sure, but it's probably Toei. We're pretty sure it was Toei. This led to a lot of high-level players jumping ship, and why wouldn't they? Most of them said things along the lines of, I'm not going to dedicate my time to a game where the rights holder can just say no tournaments for a while. Why would they? Now, for EVO 2019, Dragon Ball has the second lowest number of entries in the entire event, and that is really, really sad.
Yeah, I mean, when companies get involved in a terrible way like that, it'll tend to happen. They're still on Saturday though for finals, so still check it out. I mean, it's a hype video game.
It's a really cool, fun game to watch. I will definitely be watching it if I have a chance. I'm excited at the very least. I just wish it could be another one of the big hype displays we got like last year. But oh well. So finding the music people for this game was really hard. Generally, it seems like top billing is given to one Toshiyuki Kishi. Now, Kishi was born on October 17th, 1969 in Chiba, Japan. And he also happens to serve as the keyboardist and programmer, I don't quite know what that means, but that's his title apparently, for the J-rock band Abingdon Boys School.
Yeah.
They have performed the OPs and EDs for various animes, such as Darker Than Black, D. Rayman, and Soul Eater, just to name a couple. And cool, good talk. His blood type is O. That's all the information I have for you.
All right, good to know.
It's so hard to find information on this man that he presented a brand new issue that neither of us have ever run into in our, the 27 episodes of this show? Mm-hmm. And that is, I don't know what his discography is.
Wow.
ANN, Anime News Network, claims that he did music for several Dragon Ball games, such as Revenge of King Piccolo, Battle of Z, Budokai Tenkaichi 3, Extreme Butoden, and Raging Blast, but I can't find any sources that confirm that, and IMDb, as shaky as sources they already were, lists him as one of the composers behind Jump Force, but Wikipedia does not list him as a composer on Jump Force, and again, I cannot find any sources that say he is. So, I don't know.
You want to know what gets even weirder? For VGMDB.net, a site I love, and just it's a whole cavalcade of official video game releases and data, information, credits, specifically what track credits. Nothing for Dragon Ball FighterZ. So, like, usually we were able to say, like, oh, this person did this track, this person composed this track. Nothing. It's like, don't know who did what. So, yeah, there's a team here.
But we don't know who did what. This is the biggest, absence of information I have yet encountered in the entire time we have done this show.
Which is weird. Like, the game came out last year, not 1988.
The game came out last year, and it's about one of the biggest anime franchises ever. And it was one of the biggest fighting games in years. We can't find anything. It's so weird. The team, according to Wikipedia, the music team was made up of Toshiyuki Kishi, Hiromi Mizutani, Kenji Kato, and Reno. None of these people have Wikipedia articles. This game is just a wasteland of no information when it comes to music. It's bizarre.
So yeah, we're just going to credit these as Toshiyuki Kishi et al.
Yeah.
The team made these songs, but yeah, these songs rule.
So let's go ahead and jump into our critical tracks. Because I've talked about Dragon Ball far too much. Again, I'm very sorry. I love Dragon Ball. It's good. It's close to my heart. Starting our critical tracks is a song that I think has basically become the de facto quote-unquote main theme of Dragon Ball FighterZ, regardless of whether it was meant to be or not. West City Stage. So, this tends to be the song that you hear. This is the song that introed it at EVO last year. And when you watch, videos on the game, this is usually the song you will hear. It's the most famous song and the most famous stage song in the game. I think it's become that for a reason. It is a fantastic piece. The violin and horns just work so well, and feels tense. Feels like it's time for a fight.
Yeah, awesome for a stage theme. Now, usually, they'll get you hype, but I don't know about to this extreme. This is cool.
Mm-hmm. After that, we have Theme of Vegeta. Am I only including this because Vegeta is my favorite character in Dragon Ball and I wanted to talk about him? Yes. But also, this song rocks. Literally rocks, because that guitar is going hard. And I love it. And it feels like Vegeta. If somehow you have avoided all information on Dragon Ball ever, Vegeta is this very serious, prideful dude who started as a villain and then became an ally, basically became pretty much the secondary main character of Dragon Ball, like I said earlier. And he's just very serious, very quick to anger, and he's super cocky. And this song, I think, fits that personality type to a T. This is a song that to me says, hey, don't mess with Vegeta, because he is going to mess you up.
You're right. And even in this clip here, it kind of goes through a range of, feels, moods. It kind of shows people may want to paint Vegeta as a one-note bad guy, but he's got some range to him.
Mm-hmm. After that, we have Theme of Trunks. This is actually the first song I ever heard outside of the game, weirdly enough. And that's because it was mentioned by Wooly from Wooly Versus. He does a lot of stuff with fighting games. And he mentioned that Trunks' theme was it was the coolest, it was the best. part of that might have been that Trunks was like his favorite character, but to me, this song is just this beautiful mix of rock and orchestration that feels really unique, and it feels heroic because Trunks is a hero. In his universe, Trunks is, or I guess not in his universe, for people that do not know, Trunks is from the future, but a different future than the one that we follow in the show's timeline, because in his future, androids 17 and 18 have wrecked the world and killed all of the main characters of Dragon Ball. They're all dead, and Trunks is basically the only Saiyan left, and he goes back in time to try and stop that from happening and warn everybody about what's about to happen. In his timeline, when he goes back after all of the Cell stuff is over and all that, he's a hero. He's this huge hero, and he shows back up in Super, where, again, he's like this beacon of hope for the people trying to fight against the end of the world, basically, and this song fits that to a T. I love it.
Heroic is the good description for it. Yeah, and it's kind of like I would almost say like the essential theme in this game. Like, just, it's for a character theme, like, I don't want to say this is like, it kind of does a disservice to call it like, middle of the road, but like it's kind of like what a Dragon Ball FighterZ character theme should be, and Trunks is a good representation of that. I love it. Our next two are very different songs, though. Oh, yeah.
The first one being Theme of Beerus. Dangerous, powerful, but more importantly than anything else, divine. Because lest you forget, Beerus is a god. He is the destroyer of Universe 7. And so, this heavenly choir, these powerful drums, the heavy use of brass, it's all there to make sure that you remember that not only is Beerus a god, but he is a god that is not to be trifled with.
And he's also an Egyptian looking like cat.
I love his design. His design is so good.
It's like an Anubis thing. I get it, like a death being, but yes.
He is, again, the god of destruction of Universe 7, because, as Dragon Ball Super introduces, there are 12 universes, each with their own Kais and own destroyers. In fact, Beerus's brother Champa is the destroyer of Universe 6. Yes, they are named after beer and champagne. All characters in Dragon Ball are named after something weird. Most of them food.
If bra wasn't any interpretation earlier.
Yeah. Or Vegeta, his name is Vegetable. Goku's Saiyan name is Kakarot. They're all named weirdly. Beerus is not only a super fun character to play in the game, and also a character I will never wrap my head around because he can do this weird stuff with orbs. But he's just a fun character in general, and he's a character that's very quick to anger, and the problem with him being a character that's very quick to anger is that he can destroy entire planets with the snap of his finger. So he's super cool, and this song just, again, it fits him perfectly, and it feels different from any of the other three songs we've talked about so far.
Yeah, the stakes are raised with this one. And yeah, if it's a divine being, absolutely.
Speaking of super different from literally everything we've talked about, and there's a pattern here that this genre is the fifth song on both of our lists this week. But let's talk about the theme of Hit. Jazz rock. Okay.
I'm down.
I'm down too. It sounds cool. I don't know why this is the genre they went with for Hit, but it works perfectly. Hit is an assassin from Universe 6. He has the power to skip forward a fraction of a second in time, which makes him one of the few opponents that Goku fights and doesn't give Goku trouble because he's super strong, but because he's also fighting really smart. He's basically fighting using lag, if you think about it.
Okay.
Like, he's skipping frames. It's weird. It's hard to explain, and it's kind of stupid unless you see it, like, in motion. I love him. He's the best thing to come out of Dragon Ball Super, because the only other thing anybody remembers is Jiren, and the less said about Jiren, the better. And so I think, seeing as he is the only character on this, well, technically the only character on this roster from a different universe, giving him, on the launch roster at least, giving him a theme that sounds nothing like anybody else on the roster was a really good touch.
Yeah, good call. The sax player is just killing it here. You know,
hell yeah.
Again, love jazz, love hearing this. Good fit to be on the Critical 5.
It is a great song, and I'm pretty sure our friend Moses would kill me if I didn't include it. So we got some songs on the cutting room floor. Hit me with yours first.
I'll go with a stage. I know, West City is certainly one that deserves to belong here, but I took a shine to Planet Namek stage. It's just this catchy riff, the guitar going at it, but I think it mostly just brings me back to like big Budokai throwback vibes, and just
I can hear that.
a lot of nostalgia there, because like the Namek stage was like the best track on that soundtrack with a really memorable guitar theme, so I like this one a lot. Makes you think of that. I also like theme of Android 18. I don't know, maybe it's another comparison to Street Fighter V, where it's blonde women fighters that get synths in their character tracks. I think it just shows, like, yeah, it's not all electric guitars on this soundtrack in particular. Like, the synth and bass are used here to really a good effect. Just gives a good beat and sound to it, and it's one that really, when it kicked in, it really caught my ear.
You just have a crush on Android 18 like the rest of the universe. Don't hide from it.
I'm better than Krillin, though. Bite me, Krillin.
Krillin lucked out on that one. For me, my two are the theme of Boo. This one is specifically for Majin Buu, the fat, baby-like Majin Buu. And it's just a bouncy little tune. Because it's very happy and bouncy, much like Majin Buu himself. This is not the theme for Kid Buu. He gets his own separate theme because he's his own separate character. But again, this is just another one of those themes where I'm like, that fits Buu, 100%. And then, theme of Yamcha. This theme is a rockin' theme. Yamcha, of all people, was high tier in Dragon Ball FighterZ for a while, even though the joke has always been that Yamcha is the joke character of Dragon Ball. Even Dragon Ball Super makes that exact same joke.
He's the one curled up in the crater for a reason.
Yeah, though, I'll be fair, Yamcha's the only one that after the Saiyans was like, yeah, no, I'm done. It's getting too much, and I'm out of here. But this theme is super good, and the fact that he was high tier for a while makes my heart happy, because that's the one meme that I wanted. So what'll I never forget about the game? It's Dragon Ball. I desperately wish that I had the mechanical skills to be good at this game. If any fighting game on Earth was one that I wanted to be very good at, it'd be Dragon Ball FighterZ. But unfortunately, it is not to be. But I think the thing I like the most is that even if you're a scrub, fights still at least look really cool. I took this game over to my grandparents on Thanksgiving last year and set it up and handed my 7-year-old cousin the controller, and my uncle who plays first-person shooters sometimes, and that's really it. And they had a blast. And the fights looked great. A 7-year-old and an adult, and the 7-year-old actually did pretty good. So it's just a really fun game to watch, to play. It's beautiful, especially if you're a fan of Dragon Ball. I love it.
Yeah, I don't even own Dragon Ball FighterZ, so what I'll never forget is, that reveal trailer, how hype everyone got, and yeah, you're right, just watching these matches, they're incredible. I mean, certain things like with Sonic Fox and Goichi, incredible matches. So I think that's what I'll never forget. Like, yeah, I have good memories with Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and those old fighting games, but this is the perfect distillation of all of that.
It's a fantastic game, and I'm so happy it's real. I'm very happy it exists. Now make a JoJo game. That's what I want next.
No, I bet you that'll happen. After they're coming out with Kill la Kill here, so I'm sure that'll be soon. Grand Blue, probably somewhere in there. Persona 5 Fighter, I'm sure, is down the road.
Oh, yeah.
They got to get to JoJo eventually, though. That would make sense. So, yeah, big Evo weekend here coming up if you're listening to this at launch, or even if you're listening to a little bit early over on Patreon. Patreon.com/AnonDino. Get these episodes early. When they're done, you can listen to the YouTube version. That's certainly a possibility. But, yeah, so on Saturday of Evo Finals weekend, Dragon Ball FighterZ will be there. And then Street Fighter V Arcade Edition on Sunday. Followed by Tekken 7, followed by Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So, Smash wins in the end. It's okay. Well, that'll do it for this episode on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakEasy. Joe is over at The Dobaga. You can find the video version of the show on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also over at rhymeswithasia.com. It's that podcast version you want, though. Get that MP3 over at Anonymous Dinosaur. That's anondino.squarespace.com. But really, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Google Play, subscribe to that podcast feed there, download it, take it with you on a run, in your car, at work. Listen, we won't tell your boss. It's okay. You can listen during work. But check it out there. That's probably the easiest way to listen. We did mention that Patreon, patreon.com/AnonDino. $1 a month gets you these early versions out when we've got them ready, which can be pretty early. Also, we've got the Spotify playlist. What's on from this week?
Street Fighter. Street Fighter 5 is on there. Dragon Ball is not, unfortunately.
Well, better something than nothing, at least, right? Then you can also find us on social media at Soundchat OST, where you give us feedback on how we're doing with these episodes, and also suggestions for what you'd like us to play, and also cover for the soundtracks on this show. So, Joe, who are we talking about next week?
Next week, I'm going to talk about Kyle Gabler.
I will talk about Satoshi Okubo. I think we got some different games coming our way than just big fighting games. So, Joe, let's play us out.
Well, like Peter mentioned earlier, it's a Little V Mills week, guys. Because mine is his epic metal cover of West City, because again, that's the song. So please enjoy that.
Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.